wish you a warm welcome to the MASA Conference 2015 of the political session. Thanks for coming on the Easter break. It's been great to gather students from all across Australia sharing the passion for a better Malaysia. Today we are honored to have three insightful speakers here, namely Dato' Sadudin Abdullah, YB Liu Jin Tong, and Ahmad Hamidi Abdul Rahim. Before we begin, allow me to introduce just a little bit about myself. I am Lam Kajun, currently doing environmental science in Melbourne Uni. During my free time, I like to read Malaysia Conservative University and be a think tank of Malaysian Aspiration Program. And more of my free time, I like to write about the human experiences that come across. Yeah. So our topic today is the changing political scene, rise of moderates in Malaysia. No doubt, there have been many news hogging our headlines lately. In addition to various racial and religious issues, there's an increasing skepticism among Australian students here regarding the talk of moderation by the federal government. 6 years ago, we launched One Malaysia, as well as a promise to reform restrictive laws. That's when young Malaysians were positive that change was on the horizon and the situation in the nation was improving. However, this hope has not been fully fulfilled. There have been various positive legal reforms, such as the abolition of ISP and the reform of the UUCA, Universities and Colleges Act. But recent actions by the federal government, such as the charging of several individuals with the Sedition Act, have called into questions into how serious is the government for the commitment to change. While such serious issues have been plaguing Malaysia, there exists a perception that the opposition as well has failed to address these problems urgently and effectively. Instead, the opposition has been consistently distracted with problems such as the Kajang move, election frauds, as well as the never-ending straining ties between PAS and DAP. Now, all these issues call into question the ability of the opposition to tackle the biggest problems in Malaysia. But despite the political deadlock, there is a reason why we are all here today, that youth today are still optimistic for a better Malaysia. Now, along the way of today's discussion, we might learn more about how can we truly define moderation. There's a large spectrum of issues in Malaysia today, be it hudud, GST, and increasing living costs. The fundamental of today's discussion is, can we as a nation move forward together in moderation, be it socially or politically, and what really matters to us. Now, before we proceed, allow me to mention the format of today's discussion. Each speaker will be given 8 minutes to speak on the topic. The timekeeper will raise the card at the last 3rd minute and the 1st minute. So the timekeeper is right. Yeah. So after that, we'll proceed to the Q&A session, where questions will be open to the floor. There are microphones just right in the center of the auditorium. Now, we do note that there should be no bickering, mudslinging, or personal attacks. This is not our Malaysian Parliament, alright? We do hope to act in utmost professionalism. It's also important to note that there's a maximum of 30 seconds time frame for every question. So please keep your questions precise and to the point. So our first speaker today is Dato' Sadudin Abdullah. He's the CEO of the Global Movement of Moderates under the patronage of Prime Minister. Now, he wants a Malaysia that is no longer obsessed with race. Among his proudest moments was amending the Section 15 of the Universities and Colleges Act, or AUKU, that allows more political freedom among students. He strongly believes in national consensus and reconciliation by establishing the National Consultative Council (NUCC) in 2013. Now, one of the major initiatives that they have done is drafting a National Harmony Bill that provides a framework to replace the Sedition Act. Without further ado, let us put our hands together to welcome the speaker.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Kau yang pertama, Dato' brothers and sisters, first and foremost, let me congratulate the organizers for successfully organizing MASA. Give them a very big hand. And thank you for inviting me to be alongside Ahmad, who I believe is an aspiring politician. There you are on the wrong panel. And to be again with my good friend, Wadi Chintong. I suppose he leaves Parliament today because Parliament there is quite boring. So yeah, thank you for inviting me. I am a politician on sabbatical, so I'm a freelancer. No, it doesn't mean anything. Okay. I took the liberty of asking the organizer to distribute a 3-page note on the project that GMM is now conducting. We call it the Future of Malaysia. But I'm not going to refer to that note in my presentation. I will invite my young brothers and sisters to look at it, especially when you find difficulties in going to sleep, and see if you can have some spare time and yeah, perhaps contribute something to the idea, to the conversation that Malaysians should start talking about the future of Malaysia, take the future of Malaysia in our own hand, and try to decide what the future of Malaysia should be like. And that includes participating in politics, either directly or indirectly. Politics is like war. Many people don't like politics, but no one likes war. But when war happens, it affects every one of us. So, likewise, politics, you may not aspire to be a politician in the real sense of the word, but if these politicians, some not very clever one among us, who decide what is going to happen to those who are the cleverest among you. Imagine the irony of things. Okay, please don't count that timekeeper. That was my propaganda. that time, what do you call it, advertisement. Now, on moderation, in 2010, in his maiden speech as Prime Minister at the UN General Assembly, Dr. Srinaju made this clarion call for moderates of the world to band together, to speak up and to down the voices and to act off the extremists. He launched what is now known as the Global Movement of Moderates. I happen to be the one working on this project now for almost 2 years, but GMM was established 2 years before I joined. In his speech, he referred to wasatiyah, which is stated in the Holy Quran, verse Al-Baqarah, ayat 143. Wasatiyah is normally translated into English as moderation, but if you look at many of the tafsirs, like Sayyid and others, broadly the best translation of wasatiyah and moderation, or kesederhanaan, is actually justly balanced. Keseimbangan yang adil. And we should admire this justly balanced paradigm into all aspects of our life. As an individual, as a member of the family, as a member of the society, and if you are in government, in formulating policies and programs for the people. How then do we situate this justly balanced paradigm? For instance, we have to balance between what is the form and what is the substance. Is hudud the form or really the substance when it comes to Sharia law and when it comes to politics? the balance between the pillars of the nation and the new realities of today. The pillars of the nation, among others, would be the Federal Constitution, the Rukun Negara, our heritage, our history, our tradition. The new realities of today would, for instance, include elements like the advent of the ICT and the new media, the rise of the new social consciousness and new social movement, especially among the young and the professional and the more educated citizenry of Malaysia, and the middle class, the rising role of the middle class, and the emergence of what I normally call the new middle ground of Malaysia, or Chin Tong call it the new middle Malaysia. How do we balance between achieving a high-income nation through a vibrant economy and at the same time looking after people who unfortunately belong to the bottom of the, or are situated at the bottom of the pyramid? So we are here talking about inclusive development. How do we migrate from formal inclusiveness to substantive inclusiveness? How do we balance between law and order on the one side, and freedom and human rights and upholding of democratic principles on the other side? How do we balance race and religion in the context of each and every one of us maintaining your own identity as, say for instance, I am a Malay, I am a Muslim, but at the same time, I must remember that I am a Malaysian first, because I have my favorite fellow other Malaysians who are not Muslim and who are not Malays. How do we in Parliament, for instance, balance in terms of the agenda setting? There is such thing called as government agenda and non-government agenda, which is not happening at all now. And that is why I support, for instance, the work of a group called Coalition for Parliamentary Reform. How do we balance, because we are federal, how do we balance then Putrajaya and Kuantan and Temerloh, Putrajaya and Kuching, Putrajaya and Kota Kinabalu? I'm talking here about decentralization of governance, where there is a new kind of relationship and interaction and understanding and collaboration between the federal, the state, and what about the third tier, which is local government? Why is it that we have election at the federal and the state but not at the local government? So I support the call for restoring of the local government election, for instance. Do I sound like I'm unknown still? I am. How do we balance between, say, I give you an example of a premium aspect of life, i.e. education. How do we balance parental choice as to allow parents the freedom to choose to what schools they want to send their kids to, and nation building? So you have nation building where the government has a role to play, but we are living in a democratic society where parents have a choice. How do we balance this? What happened then when you see that the balance is not aligned or the balance is missing? This is where moderates have to speak up. You have to speak up even if you have to speak up if you are a government. You have to speak up even if you are in opposition. You have to speak up even if you are in civil society movement, or even if you are a student body or an individual. That is why we welcome when moderates start speaking up, either as individuals or as a group. Examples of emerging group would be G25, or Liana's IM26, or Azlo's Malaysian for Malaysia, or the latest one from Sabah, G47. I saw the letter, the open letter yesterday, led by, I can't remember the name, but I know Tan Sri Sipon, one of the leading voices of Sabah and Sarawak. So these are the issues that are before us. This is only an introduction of 5 minutes, I believe. Ms. Timekeeper, I know I have made you a little, susah nak cakap, so berhenti. But politicians are like that. You give them microphone, then you are in difficulties. MC should not ever invite politicians to give a speech. Never invite politicians to give a keynote address. When you invite politicians, you simply ask them to say a few words. So those were my few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Berlin. More than that, I've come across a few articles of Dr. Berlin. So there was this about how much bashing he had to go through to actually amend the Section 15 of the outlook. So I think for that, he deserves an applause as well. So our next speaker is YB Liu Ching-tong from DAP. So he's a member of Parliament of Kluang. He's the Political Education Director of the Democratic Action Party, DAP. In fact, he was a graduate from ANU doing political science in 2004. So he authored the book. He is a strong advocate of moderate Malaysians. In his blog post, is his fervent hope to see the nation in waiting for a decade that will rise again to democratize political system, free government free of corruption, and see through transformation of society that has social justice and equal opportunity for all. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Fellow Malaysians, very important to all of you, perhaps when you invite an EP person, you're waiting for some provocative statement. But just mind you, the reason why Parliament is such a battling ground. Parliament everywhere is a place for grandstanding. Race, religious royalty, we don't talk about common policies. In details, we don't talk about how to redesign our institutions for our time. We are still stuck with institutions that were set up long time ago and being distorted along the way. So I think, in order not to repeat what I said yesterday together with the Saifuddin in Canberra, so I'm trying to say something new. In this short few minutes, I just want to question a few things. Now, we tend to think that we Malaysia is special. We Malaysians are special. Malaysia is a special case. No other country has this multi-racial community. We have so many races that we have to handle. We have to deal with such a diverse society. I don't know whether you've experienced census in Australia. When I was here, there was census. I don't know how often, maybe every 5 years in Australia. If you go to check the Australian Bureau of Statistics and look at how many people were born in which country and how many countries were represented. They ask you where were you born? At the least 150 countries. And forget about any groups. Just countries where you can see people, nationalities or people who were born in different countries that are represented in Australia. The numbers are huge. You have most of people. And is Malaysia unique? Not necessarily. And in modern times, multi-ethnic society, multi-faith, multi-religious society is everywhere. And then it is a challenge for all of us. I mean, those days we think that Malaysia is unique, but today, it's not unique anymore. And for a Muslim in Malaysia, we think that, Muslim is the majority, and therefore we want to implement certain things. Then suddenly someone asks you, okay, if I'm a Muslim in London, how do I deal with it? If I'm a Muslim in Australia, as a minority, how do I want the system to treat me? What sort of system, and whether that universal principle is unthinkable? We have to question ourselves. So as a Muslim, or as a non-Muslim, how do you see yourself? Now that comes back to one major question that we have to deal with in Malaysian politics. Until and unless we question the idea of race, we question in a new way. Until and unless we actually bring new insight to the question, Malaysian politics will still be manipulated by people who manipulate race for political advantages. Now, we came with the idea that race is biological. Okay? Many people think that race is biological, and the way we are taught along the way in our education, the moment you get your IC at 12 years old, race is treated as if it is biological. But if I tell you, 150 years ago, a Chinese in Malaysia would not call himself Chinese. A Chinese in Malaysia would call himself Cantonese, Hokkien, or even from smaller places. And a Malay in Malaysia would call himself Kelantanese, Kelantan, would call himself Johorian, Bugis, Minangkabau, Jawa, and they would not call themselves Malay. They don't see themselves as Malays. Who call them Malays or who call them Chinese? It started with the British labeling them as Malay and as Chinese. But today is that now there is no denial that we see many people see ourselves as Chinese, many people see ourselves as Malays. So that is there already. But my only contention is that race is not biological. Race is socially constructed.
It's a political construct.
Yeah, it's a political construct, or it's socially constructed. I just wanted to bring this idea back that race is socially or politically constructed and not biological. Now, once we can get past that, then we can go to the next step. There was a long period of time from 1991 to about 2005. Because in the 1990 election, Mahathir almost lost government. Why Mahathir almost lost government? All the non-Malays voted against the government, and there was a split in UMNO, 50-50. Almost 50-50, but towards the end, Mahathir had a majority of Malay votes. But immediately after that, Mahathir found that he couldn't actually do this race divide so much. Because otherwise, if Malay votes split into half, and he lose all the non-Malay support, then he will have to be opposition leader. But anyway, Dr. Mahathir is now the best opposition leader that we have never had. Now, I'll give you an example. This history. Dr. Mahathir is responsible for the demise or downfall of all Malaysian prime ministers except two. Except Tun Razak, who died too early, and except himself. The rest of the prime minister, Mahathir has a hand in their downfall. But for a period of time, when I was growing up, there was this talk about Vision 2020, Wawasan 2020. What was Wawasan 2020? Wawasan 2020 was a major departure from what happened in the 80s. In the 80s, it was very serious ethnic racial confrontation. But from 1991 to 2005, until Hisham waived the crease at the UMNO Assembly in 2005, there was a period of 14 years where hardly there was any racial discourse. Every time Mahathir needed an enemy, if the enemy comes from US, he was fighting the US, Mahathir was fighting the UK, British, by British plus, Mahathir was fighting the Jews, George Soros, Mahathir was fighting, the most convenient one is the Singaporeans. But hardly, there was very little racial talk. So, for a period of time, many Malaysians say, oh, we are all Malaysians. Because we were fighting the US, we don't fight among ourselves. And when the moment you come to Australia, when you are asked, you will say that I'm a Malaysian. You hardly fall back to say I'm a Malay, I'm a Chinese, because in this environment, there are already too few Malaysians, so you have to say I'm Malaysian. And this is where I say identities are shifting identities. Identities can shift. Identities are politically constructed or socially constructed, and it is not biological. That is very important because a lot of racial discrimination are based upon by the idea of race as biological idea. A lot of stereotypes, Melayu ni macam ni, Cina macam ni. We take away the individual. The moment we see a Malay, we say, oh, Melayu ni sama saja. Macam ni. You already have certain attributes, stereotypes. And these are the Chinese, what they call attributes. That is not going to be good for our nation. For our nation to move forward, we have to see everyone as human beings, as part of the Ummah, as part of the human race. We see everyone's life as valuable, everyone's experience as an individual experience, as a Malaysian experience, and then we'll move forward. Before I end, I see the sign. I just want to give you an example of why I'm passionate about politics. I'm very passionate about transport. I'm extremely passionate about transport in Malaysia. And I used to think that I know better than the transport minister. I still think so. I'll give you an example. Malaysia has the highest per capita road death in the world. You may not know, Malaysia has the highest per capita road death in the world. Every year, about 1,000 people die on the road in Australia. Every year, about 7,000 people die on the road in Malaysia. Okay? You can see the population size and all this, you all know better than me. But why are people dying on the road? Because 60% who die on the road in Malaysia are motorcyclists. Why are people on motorcycle? Because they cannot afford a car and there is no public transport. Now, majority of those who die on the road, like the majority of the country, are Malays. Are they alive? But why do we talk about it? Because we always talk about race and forgetting that everyone who died on the road, Malaysian, Indian, Kalimantan, Iban, they are all Malaysians and they are human life when they die. They're buried using various rituals. But their blood is all great and they're all Malaysians. So I think any ideas about moderation has to challenge the ideas of the biological race and has to see shifting identity, has to build a Malaysian identity that bring everyone together and look at real policy issues, transport, road death, housing, water. Look at all this from a Malaysian perspective. Thank you.
Australian states in the past few days. So he was in Melbourne for 2 days, Canberra yesterday, and now Brisbane. So yeah. So next up we have Ahmad Hamidi Abdul Rahim, also known as Mini among his friends. So he's a member of IKRAM Australia and co-president of Malaysian Progressive Australians. He was the CEO of Malaysian Aspiration Program 2012 and co-director of Malaysian Aspiration Summit 2012. Born and raised in Negeri Sembilan, he has came a long way. He has came a long way to earn the best student for constitutional law from Monash University. He has been involved. He has been involved in many civil awareness initiatives by moderating and speaking with the likes of Zaid Ibrahim, Rafizi Ramli, and Tony Kwa. So, jangan salah semuanya, silakan.
Thank you, my friend, for the kind introduction. I'm not an aspiring politician. I'm a concerned citizen. And I think that even if you're not a politician, by being a concerned citizen, you still can affect and contribute to the betterment of Malaysia. So that's what I think is terribly lacking in Malaysia. actual rakyat movement that do more than just wanting the change, but actively insisting on the change and do what is necessary to be done to be the agent of the change. So you don't have to be a politician. Aku pun introduction. So I'm also a political nerd lah. I like to follow political news all around the world, and if you watch, because UK will be having their own general election on 7th of May. So last week is their debate, the debate for the Prime Minister candidate, and very exciting things happened during the debate. What happened at that time is that the first question that they put to the Prime Minister candidates is a question from a 17-year-old high school student. And the question from the high school student is about how to reduce the budget deficit without reducing the spending on vital public utilities like NHS. Very sophisticated question. I don't want to talk about the question, but I want to talk about how much they value the voice of the young British. And I think that is the necessary ingredient of a mature democracy. The synchronization of the passion and new ideas of the youth, and also the openness and the experience of the elders. And that is exactly what I have in my mind when I stand here. I'm not standing. When I sit here and given the same stage to discuss about ideas. And I want to personally congratulate MASA Australia for moving to that direction, to put the voice of the student and the youth in a more, what we call that, central position in the process of nation building. And I think that's a really good progress. I want to talk about politics, but I want to comment a bit about what Kaju said just now when he said that this is not Malaysian Parliament and everybody laugh. I think it's a very sad situation, because the first thing that comes to our mind when we talk about Parliament is all of the shouting, the polarized politics, extreme partisan position, very pessimist views on the practice of politics. And that happened because a lot of Malaysians have a narrow view on politics. They only see that politics is about party politics, and I don't think that's the case. I think politics is much broader than that, and one of them is the politics of ideas. And that is the thing that I want to focus in the rest. How many minutes I got left? How many minutes? 6 minutes. Oh, thank you. The rest 6 minutes, I want to talk about specific ideas, which is the ideas of moderation. Why? Because I think if you want to practice moderate politics, you must firstly know how to become moderate. And we need to properly define. Because if you remember, if you've been reading Malaysian news, especially December last year, when the G25 first emerged, suddenly Ibrahim Ali said that I'm a moderate as well. So there is a confusion on the semantic of what does moderate means. And I want to explore the ideas for the rest of the right now. So I think that moderation is not a unique ideology, it's not a separate ideology if you prefer. It's more like a guiding principles. It's like a standard SOP, like if you prefer, standard of procedure. Meaning to say is that it does not concern so much about what values you believe in. It concerns more towards how you convey the ideas to the public sphere. So what makes you a moderate is how you behave and interact and engage with the wider society. I'll give you for example. I have a chat with my friend. I work at Paparis. Come to Paparis, very good stuff. The roti canai is the best in Malaysia. It's not Malaysia. The closest that we can get to a roti canai in Malaysia is in Paparis. Because I work there. So
Got discount or not?
Because I'm not a CEO of Global Moderate Movement. I'm just a waiter in Paparis. I don't really have time for Paparis. So I have a chat with my colleagues now. So he said to me, Midi, what do you think about hudud? And I said that as a part of Muslim conviction, I believe that hudud is actually part of being a Muslim. It's not something that is invention of the scholars. Some people say it's inside the Quran. So my conviction of Muslim is I believe hudud. And suddenly he said, so you're no longer moderate. So I find that proposition very problematic. me a moderate, I believe so I want to become a moderate. I want to become a moderate. Is if I ever want to make hudud as part of Malaysian law, for example, I don't have any intention to, because like I said just now, I don't want to be a politician. I want to be a citizen. Kan? So we don't focus solely much on the conclusion of the engagement, but the process of the engagement itself. Meaning just to say, if there is a differences in opinion among the society member, we settle it through engagement and dialogue, through accepted democratic process. Accepted democratic process in Malaysia. Makes me a moderate. I believe so I want to become a moderate. I want to become a moderate. Is if I ever want to make hudud as part of Malaysian law, for example, I don't have any intention to, because like I said just now, I don't want to be a politician. I want to be a citizen. Kan? So we don't focus solely much on the conclusion of the engagement, but the process of the engagement itself. Meaning just to say, if there is a differences in opinion among the society member, we settle it through engagement and dialogue, through accepted democratic process. The accepted democratic process in Malaysia is in Parliament. I rather see the debate about hudud to be held in Parliament rather than in the comment section of Malaysian Insider. So that's why I think it's unfortunate if you think you are the most liberal Malaysian, but you look down, you suddenly reject, automatically reject views that is different from you. I'm not saying that hudud should be part of law, Malaysian law, but what I'm saying is that we should manage the debate and the discourse better, because hudud fiasco has polarized Malaysia so much. If you read the news, there is a comment coming from the ex-IGP saying that if we proceed with the hudud, maybe Sarawak and Sabah want to break off from Malaysia. Extremely polarizing. And part of the reason is because the kind of discourse, the nature of discourse is very polarizing. A lot of the use of language of fear and prejudice. I think the reason why this is happening is lots of us, the actors in the public discourse, have an inadequate sense of empathy. It's very easy for us to treat people who have a different views from us as an enemy, as an adversary. So that's why we resort to labeling, name calling. When you see hudud, suddenly say, oh, now we are moving, we are becoming Taliban in the next 2 years. And among the Muslims say, the non-Muslim who don't support hudud is anti-Muslim. So they resort to name calling and labeling. I think that if you want to have a better discourse, we should not be so fixated on the position, but look at the interest at stake. For example, PAS hudud. I'm not saying PAS hudud lah. Okay lah, PAS hudud. Better for us to understand lah, because the fiasco is about a proposition from PAS. So some of people say there is a political ploy. I beg to differ. Some of the Muslims genuinely believe that it is a part of their duty to advance, to at least propagate lah, to at least suggest that hudud should be part of the law. It's a genuine belief. And I think it's a fair question from a non-Muslim and some of the Muslim to think that, to feel afraid of hudud. So we need to focus on the interest at stake. So only then we can search for a common ground if there's any. Or at least, if you cannot find a common ground, we appreciate that in the world where there is a different opinion, of course there will be a clash of ideas. So at that moment, we settle it through democratic process, and in Malaysia through the operation of law. If you still don't agree with the decision it passed in the Parliament, then challenge it in the court. So that is how I think the debate should be resolved. My point is, the importance, if you want to become moderate, it doesn't matter what you believe in. You can be a passionate secularist. You can be a strong believer of religion to be a more integral role in the politics. Or you can be an avid believer of race-based politics. It doesn't matter. because only in a free society we can see different, the contestation of ideas. In North Korea, where there is no freedom, people have a unified voice. But we don't want that, right? So we need to appreciate the differences of ideas that we see in the public sphere. And we shouldn't afraid that, we should celebrate it. And that's why it's very important for us to manage the clashes of ideas, and so that if there is a clash, it won't lead to extreme polarization and the breakdown of our unique multicultural society of Malaysia. And I'm looking forward for us to continue to have the discussion in how to become moderates, because that's I think the way to go. Because Malaysia are blessed with difference of opinions, and that's why being moderate is extremely important. That's all I have to say for now, and I hope during the question time we can explore these topics even further. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Billy. Okay, now the floor is open for questions. So perhaps I can start queuing up. Now, perhaps I will start with raising a few questions. Just one actually. It's open for anyone to answer. So, this regarding the new bill, in fact the past bill of quota. So, in light of many acts of terrorism across the world, we see we had Australia in Sydney, France, and more recently in Kenya. We used to have ISA, which could be used to haul out the terrorists. Now, more recently, quota has been introduced. So do you think quota is seen as a reversal of democratic effort or a sincere effort by the government to curb such activities? This is open for any of you.
Question related to quota. Quota is very interesting because my interest in constitutional law and human rights. So this is really my passion. So first of all, we need to understand the competing principles at play. Right now, I believe as an initial position that government, the concept of government is an instrument of good. So I think that government should be equipped with the ability to effectively respond to security threat or something that threaten the public order. But at the same time, I also value human rights, the concept of freedoms. And we need to understand that in Malaysia, freedom is a constitutional guaranteed right. So if you think Article 153 is important, you must also think that freedom is important, because it is put a similar status as a constitutional guaranteed proposition. So, but of course, there will be exceptions, because we cannot have a perfect freedom and a perfect security at the same time. We need to find the right balance. And of course, finding the right balance is always a challenge. But my problem with quota, for example, is that I'm okay. I'm not against the whole objective of curbing terrorism. I'm not questioning the objective. What I'm questioning is the methods that is proposed to achieve the objective. Different, because there is some people in the social media say that those who reject quota is pro-terrorism. Very shallow, very, call it simple-minded way of thinking. So I'm not a pro-terrorism. Of course, I'm not a pro-terrorist. So the thing is, if you want to give a broad power to the government, it must you must attach some form of safeguard and form of responsibilities. Because in the end of the day, power corrupt. And Malaysia doesn't have a good record when it comes to have a broad power. If you remember ISA, it was meant to target the communists. Yeah, but in 2008, it's been used against politicians, and also during the Operation Lalang, 100 members, opposition members, is being put in sedition without trial. So that's why I said there must be an effective safeguard mechanism, and the only safeguard mechanism that I can think of is a judicial review. The problem with quota is because the definition of terrorism is defined by the executive, which is the government branch, the executive branch. And the judicial have no power to check whether or not the arrest that is made is appropriate or not, wrongful or not. I find it problematic. I can settle, at least I can tolerate with detention without trial, but there must be an effective safeguard mechanism, and it is absent inside the quota. So that's why I reject it wholeheartedly. I will call my MPs. My MP is Kali Jabrudin, by the way. I want to earn. So that's what I think about. It is reversal to the progress that we made since 2012, and I find it very depressing. Yeah. Okay.
I have written 13 points against quota in my Facebook, and part of it has been taken by Malaysian Insider a couple of days ago. GMM is all supportive of initiatives to fight violent terrorism. In fact, GMM is involved in the fight against violent terrorism in a certain way, especially looking at the fanboys and the fenders and the midnight uploaders. These are jargons that people use in counter-terrorism. Number one, SOSMA is sufficient. Number two, quota has got three big problems. A, it is the reinsertion of ISA 2.0 through backdoor channel. Number two, we have problem when the executive can decide how long someone can be further detained. Then we shouldn't believe in the judicial process. And number three, I don't agree that you cannot have judicial review. Point number three, it is almost like the style of every government in the world. When you are faced with this kind of problem, you will come up with new laws. But more often than not, there is that less balancing act with freedom that Midi was about. Number four, more often than not, it is misused or manipulated. Number five, harsh laws like that do not necessarily answer the root cause. We have had ISA, but we cannot address Al-Mabna. The US have Patriot Act, but they cannot address ISIL. Point number six. Often, when certain laws like this, and when governments show that they are more stringent in the way they fight terrorism, the government will earn a short-term benefit by having a higher ranking among public perception, but there is always backlash in the form of radicalization, which will come in later. It's not going to come here, and probably not during the tenure where Zahid is Minister of Defense. Point number 7. I hope I can remember all of the team. Yeah. I believe if different group of people in government were drafting the law, like for instance the people who were drafting the white paper, quota would be better. I'm not saying I'm against quota. I'm simply saying the wrong group of people were preparing quota. I can't tell you who was the group preparing the white paper. That group would have done 10 times better than the group who came up with quota. Not GMM. Next point, now I've lost count. You need buy-in from the people, because it is not just about government. When the white paper was presented, there was a lot of buy-in, because there was no heightened tension. But when you present quota in parliament, at the time when the AGP is doing I don't know what, including watch out on your Twitter, then it is very difficult for you to get buy-in. You know? And yes, another point was taken by Midi. Sometimes we say this is meant for A, but more often than not, it ends up it was also meant for B and for C and for D, like in the context of the ISA, like in the context of Sedition Act. I have not remembered all the points. All I'm trying to say is we have not struck that justly balanced paradigm. You need to fight terrorism. You need a holistic framework, that's another point. You need to include non-state actors, that's the other point that I wanted to say. So it is a big picture that we have to see when you want to fight terrorism and crime and what have you. Unfortunately, OTA does not strike that balance between law and order, as I said at the earlier stage, and freedom on the other hand. Thank you.
Just respond briefly to what we touched on some of the issues we touched on also this question. I think we started by saying that a 17-year-old student, if you follow what happened in Hong Kong last year, the uprising in Hong Kong was initiated by Joshua. And how old is Joshua? Joshua is now 18. Joshua was born in the year that Hong Kong was handed back to China in 1997. So, you won't know. And the young should never see themselves as being too young, because anything could happen, and the world is changed by ideas. The world is not changed by anything else but ideas. So ideas is important, and when ideas catch fire, age is not an issue. Age could be an issue if you are too old. I think history is important. History is important, and we should not discuss issues without the historical context. I see POSA as part of something that was very similar to 2001. In 1999, the 1999 election saw 55% of Malays voted against UMNO. But BN survived because they played the Islamic card and the fear of Islamophobia card. Non-Malays voted for BN. A year later, on the 29th of November 2000, there was a by-election, the Lunas by-election. And then the Lunas by-election, Keadilan won in a traditionally BN seat. It was a shock to BN, and within UMNO, people were asking Dr. Mahathir to step down. Now Mahathir is asking someone else to step down. And immediately after the by-election, there was a racial confrontation. There was a group called Suchu, among Chinese election appeal group. There was confrontation between UMNO youth and Suchu in December 2000. January and February 2001, there was Malay rally. UMNO organized big rally in early February 2001 because Malays are under threat. In April, when Keadilan wanted to organize a demonstration, 10 persons were arrested under ISA, including Tian Chua, Izam Muhammad Noor, Raja Petra, Sarish Sungit. April 2001. In May 2001, two major Chinese newspapers were bought by MCA. In June, there was this issue of Negara Islam, PAS gaduh dengan DAP dalam media, and Utusan said PAS must quit Barisan Alternative because DAP mengkhianatkan PAS, and then Chinese newspaper say that DAP mesti keluar daripada Barisan Alternative kerana PAS khianatkan DAP. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. On the 22nd of September, DAP left Barisan Alternative. On the 29th of September 2001, Mahathir declared that Malaysia is already an Islamic state. PAS, can you go back to think about what is your model of Islamic state and present it later? Mahathir regained initiative. Mahathir regained control through racial discussion, through dividing the opposition by using the wedge, Islam, and through arresting people. I see all similarities here. You have a weak prime minister being challenged. You have through dividing the opposition by using the the wage, Islam, and through arresting people. Now, I see all similarities here. Okay, you have a weak prime minister being challenged. You have heightened racial discourse. You have hudud as a wage trying to divide the opposition, and I see all elements there. So I think we have to discuss this in that sort of context, where a weak prime minister is trying to come back, trying to swing back, trying to regain initiative in order for him to stay relevant and stay in power by removing the opposition leader, by removing the opposition coalition, by arresting people, or having power to actually tell people that I can arrest you, so that you better keep quiet, especially telling people from the within, because you can arrest opposition leaders and they say, okay, when we join opposition, we are prepared to be arrested. At least you have that psychological preparation that you know that may come. But UMNO people are afraid of it. So that I think is very similar. I just want to briefly touch on the question of hudud. I did a forum in KL with some other friends 2 weeks ago. And I say hudud is the politics of the 1980s. In 1982, Anwar joined UMNO and gave UMNO the Islamic face. In October 1982, PAS had an internal coup. The new generation, Hadi at that time was only 35 years old. The new generation took over from the old generation who campaigned on Malay platform. Dato' Asri was ousted from the position and eventually sacked from the party. There was a new group taking over PAS. And in order to differentiate PAS from Anwar's UMNO, or Anwar's as an Islamic face of UMNO, PAS decided to go on this debate on hudud, on Negara Islam, which they did not talk about in the 70s or earlier. In the 80s also, Anwar promoted Islamic banking, Islamic finances, Islamic universities, in order to give credential to Islam, untuk memajukan nama Islam. But today, after the global financial crisis, especially in Australia, you follow what is the economic news. After the global financial crisis, is Islamic banking the way we do it? Is this the right thing to do? Is this the right thing to continue on? Is it actually improving Islam's ideas of justice or not? And I ask a question. Today, if you issue sukuk to build up one MDB, halal or haram? Okay, you know that one MDB is trouble, you don't agree with one MDB, and then you say issue sukuk to build up one MDB. Is that sukuk actually memajukan dalam Islam ataupun menegakkan keadilan? I think that is something that we have to think about. Likewise, the question of hudud, it belongs to the 1980s, and we have to think about the context, we have to think about a world where they are Muslim who are minorities. In different countries, they are Muslim who are majority, and we are all living in a condition, in a situation where we have to see of how to advance the name of Islam, not just the name of Islam, but actually the ideas of Islam in a holistic way.
Thank you, Rajiv. That's what we're for questions. Please introduce yourself. Yeah. My name is Nasif. I'm standing here to whatever. Okay, never mind that. I wanted to change the course of the conversation a bit because my passion is a little less about law, more to education, because I cherish my teachers that much. So, the BT3 was implemented for the first time, and we saw a huge debate only on Facebook though. And when we went through all the comments, you could see that a lot of it was, I think, but still, this is what I think, this is what he thinks. So it's about a clash of opinions rather than a clash of facts. So I was thinking, well, rather than giving opinions, we're going to give facts. So I was thinking, where could parents get facts about PT3? So the nearest medium for them is of course the teachers. And then you start throwing down the comments and you see, cikgu pun cikgu tak tahu apa-apa. So
that's telling us, similar to what you said about the Hulu, is a clash of opinions. It's really because it's not really well educated by the government. I mean, from my opinion, because I'm staying here in Australia, so I don't see what's happening back in Malaysia. So maybe it is proper education or something, but why don't teachers, the people who are actually directly involved in it, well informed enough to inform parents and other people or the public what it really is? I want to talk about GST as well, because apparently the customers don't know much, or maybe they know the lyrics to the song, but I'll say GST for the economics of later. So probably my question really is, how well is the government educating the public before implementing new policies?
So this question is for.
I'm really opening to everyone. Yeah. Thank you.
My question is specific to IB. Hi, my name is Ifa. I'm a student from EQ, and just now you mentioned that you're very passionate about the transport in Malaysia. Well, as we all are aware, the public transport there are not as sufficient as in Australia. So, since you're very passionate about it, what are your plans to improve? I mean, do you have like any strategies that you can improve? Alright, thank you.
Assalamualaikum, good morning. My name is Hanif, I'm from YouTube. I don't read much. But from what I gathered, it seems that we don't have a centralized discussion, debate on a lot of issues, a lot of policies, and that results in debates, and for many years now, extremely polarizing societies in Malaysia. So how, as a society, as communities of Malaysia, as the people of Malaysia, how do we push our nation to a more, to develop, to have a more centralized discussion, to have a more mature discussion of policies in terms of politics, economics, and social education and all that. Thank you.
We will just have 3 questions.
Oh, okay. Can I?
Thank you. I like the question from Hanif, but I don't like the others, so I'm taking it because that is part of the malaise of Malaysian policy making. We have very little discussion. And at times, even when we have discussion and reports presented to the government, then it is not taken accordingly. There are a few commissions and royal commissions formed by the government, but you don't see anything out of it. The RPCMC is now close to 10 years. GMN is planning to, this is Chin Tong's idea actually, we were chatting yesterday, so I give the credit to Chin Tong. GMN is planning to do a 10th anniversary roundtable discussion of RPCMC and hopefully to invite Tan Sri Tun Zaidin, the chair of RPCMC, and see what happens. Oh yes, we will invite students or stakeholders. Yeah. Maybe if you want to come, we can send you a ticket for, I don't know, the subsidized ticket. Okay, I'm just kidding. PT3 is another example where there is lack of the debate. I must commend the government, especially the Ministry of Education at that time, for making a very, I thought it was a milestone decision in trying to have less public exam. That was a milestone, commendable, bold, and brave decision. The only problem is we came back is PT3. PT3 is to replace PMR. It's not PMR, it's a different exam altogether, but it is still a public exam. It falls under the realm of public exam. So there is a hiccup. But I really hope that they will do PT3 better next time and doesn't make it like public exam. I really support, I understand the pressure the Ministry of Education is facing, especially from parents, and that's why they have to resort to having PT3. But it's not something that is already gone. No, I think they should maintain the philosophy, the principle, and the direction that we are going to have less and less public exam. That track, tak boleh kacau, they must remain in track. They cannot go. The alignment must be maintained, but they have to do something. They have to tweak PT3 in a certain way. I hope PT3 was a short-term, So I would take PT3 as a major problem. I hope they can introduce on that. But the problem with our education system is also sometimes we have too many changes. Every time we have the minister berubah, then you have a new blueprint and things of that sort. When PPSMI were introduced by Dr. Mahathir, which I supported, but still I was concerned at that time because there was no real debate. It is like suddenly there is a new policy, you teach maths and science in English. I have my reason why I support it, but I was not very happy because it was not debated. Probably if it was debated, my support could be better, or my support could be lesser, or PPSMI could have been done better. That's the point I'm trying to arrive at. And then suddenly, you stop the policy. Still, there was no discussion. Yeah. And then you have sometimes open discussion, like town hall meetings. But when the final report is presented to the public, then one tends to think, is this based on the inputs coming from the many town hall meetings, I'm referring to the current blueprint of the school system, or is it the one done by McKinsey? And someone who knows will say, this looks more like McKinsey work than the town hall meeting. So then you have to ask this question, is this again, trying to play politics, tunjuk bagus, buat consultation, tapi at the end of it, dah siap pun, that kind of thing. So I think we have to establish, and that is why I support the group calling for parliamentary reform, so that Parliament form more standing committees. We should have committees for all, if not all the ministries, because we have so many ministries, so suddenly nanti Parliament tak kerja. Buat committee saja, but the fundamental one, like education, like finance, like maybe even unity, law reform commission, or law reform standing committee, or something like that, we need. And involve, we need a more participatory process, yeah, that is both representative, meaning all stakeholders are invited, and this is the issue here is, I want to ask you guys, every time people discuss or government discuss about education, do they really consult the most important stakeholder, i.e. students? They really consult? They take you seriously, or, lip service? I am quite cynical and sometimes quite skeptical when government say they listen to the young. Now, I was a youth leader, I was a student activist, I staged my first demonstration against my principal when I was in Form 6. I understand what student empowerment and what student representation and what student voice is, so don't play. No, because I think more often than not, government in ASEAN as a whole, they only give lip service when they say engagement. Jangan tipu lah. We know it is not sincere sometimes. And that is why people become very sarcastic, people become very skeptical. But let me end up by saying we need a more participatory lawmaking process, we need a more participatory decision-making process. That is the way to go. Thank you.
I want to take on the first question and the third question, and I want to mix my answer because I think the issues are quite interconnected. I agree with Dato' in PT3. I think it's only a symptom. It's a manifestation of a broader problem. And the broader problem is that the Minister of Education they want to leave a legacy, something that they can be proud of. They can say something like, when I was the Minister of Education, I do this, for example. And I was the victim of this problem. When I was in Form 3, the Minister of Education is Datuk Seri Syahmuddin. And under his management of Ministry of Education, they proposed sekolah cluster. And so my school, during that time, Sekolah Takut Drama, so we prepare documentation that we want to lobby so that staff will be selected as a sekolah cluster. So by the time we finished with the report, we got the title sekolah cluster. 2 months after that, the new minister come up with SBT, Sekolah Berprestasi Tinggi. So, apa? I was there because I need to do it because for sekolah cluster, you need to nominate a niche area. So my niche area at the time we want to propose debate. So I was involved in making a documentation about how my debate club is operated in sekolah terbaik. So how it should be selected as a niche area of staff. So that's why I'm pretty what we call it. I'm impressed with the way how sometimes politics can interfere with the management of the most important organization in the country, which is education. So my solution to that, I have a different solution than that was today. He said we need to improve the parliamentary system. We need to have a parliamentary Senate committee. I agree with that. But more than that, but of course, realistically speaking, I don't think that we can see a reform in the parliamentary structure in not in what we call it in the immediate timeline. So I want to suggest a new thing. We need more actual rakyat movement to become a watchdog in this issue of education. We need more participation, or maybe a parent organization to make sure and lobby hard and ask questions. If the minister suddenly want to, what we call that, change policy based on this discussion. Because we need to understand the reality of politics. Politician will always be a politician. The interest of the politician sometimes is inconsistent with the actual interest of the people. That's the reality. That's why we cannot rely entirely the affairs of the nation to the politician. So that's why we need more participation, active engagement of the rakyat to check on the politician. And that is what I think is terribly lacking in Malaysia. So that's why maybe Project Council or MASA can come up with an education group that focus specifically and lobby on this issue to make sure that our voice is actually heard. I'm not skeptic about our politician, but I think in democracy there must be some group that is representing the actual rakyat, because only rakyat knows what their interest is, and sometimes their voice is not heard. And to the third question on how to improve the discourse, the gentleman who asked the question said that we need to have a centralized platform for discourse, right? So I think one of the important components that must be present in order to have a better discourse is that more participation, active engagement of the rakyat to check on the politician, and that is what I think is terribly lacking in Malaysia. So that's why maybe Project Council or MASA can come up with an education group that focus specifically and lobby on this issue to make sure that our voice is actually heard. I'm not skeptic about our politician, but I think in democracy there must be some group that is representing the actual rakyat, because only rakyat knows what their interest is, and sometimes their voice is not heard. And to the third question on how to improve the discourse, the gentleman who asked the question said that we need to have a centralized platform for discourse, right? So I think one of the important components that must be present in order to have a better discourse is that a fair media. The problem prior to the amendment of the Press Act, so what happened in the Press Act, you guys know the Press Act, so there is a provision that allow the minister, the Home Minister, to they need to ask approval, annual approval from the minister to get a permit to publish the paper. So what happened is, media will self-censor. They will practice self-censorship. Why? Because it is the politician who will decide whether or not they have a permit for next year. So they tend to to not write a news that is unfavorable or critical to the government. The problem of self-censorship. So what happened is the only media that want to report on issues that is unfavorable to government is a tongue of the political party, like Suara Keadilan, like Harakah, like the Rocket. So what happened is, Malaysians are only presented with two options: extremely pro-government paper and extremely pro-opposition paper. That is how you polarize the nation, because there is no avenue for neutral media to shape the debate. The only source of information is either too pro-opposition or too pro-government, you know what I mean? So that is how it shaped the perception of the riot, and that is how it shaped the debate. So and this is why there is a progress with the emergence of paper like Sinar Harian to some extent, the Malay Mail online, things tend to get better. But the most important part is, like I said just now, we cannot rely entirely on the politician to solve this problem. The actual rakyat, maybe a free journalist movement, something along those lines, must lobby for the change, must insist, we need to boycott this polarized newspaper, use our power, the power as a consumer, buy more Sinar Harian, subscribe to Malay Mail. So that is how we do it, the actual rakyat involvement to shape the debate. We can do better, I believe we can do better.
Thank you.
When he say he doesn't want to be a politician, I think he speaks like a politician and watch my word, maybe one day you'll be in politics. I think the three questions is essentially questioning our governing style, including public transport, which I will touch on. And what are the problems with our governing style? Our governing style, number one, is that UMNO wants to remain in power, doesn't want to have a change of government, so all effort is done in order to prevent a change of government. So there's no bipartisanship. Why in other mature democracy they want to build bipartisanship? Because when I become opposition, I want to be treated fairly. And I want my policy to continue, so that I want you opposition and the government, I want you to come in to discuss together, so that you are also a stakeholder. When you become government, you partially own the decision and you cannot dismantle it. But there is no interest to have bipartisanship in Malaysia. But the government has also come to a stage where the government doesn't think for itself. Long time ago, the government used to think for itself. The government today outsources thinking. How does the government outsource thinking? The government outsources thinking, sometimes in a very legitimate way, outsourced to McKinsey. That is the most legitimate way already. The previous Malaysian plan, UPCO. Previous Malaysian plan, up until 9 Malaysian plan, were all drafted by EPU. The 10th Malaysian plan was drafted by McKinsey. I suspect the 11th Malaysian plan, which will be presented on 21st of May, is very likely also drafted by McKinsey or other consultants. I have no idea because I have no access. I'm from the opposition. So the government doesn't want the opposition to think, yet the government doesn't want to think for itself. The government outsources thinking. Sometimes there are more ways of outsourcing thinking which are not very legitimate. For instance, outsourcing town planning to a developer. So the developer will plan everything and come to you to tell you, okay, this is the city, this is the new city. You go to, you as a minister, you go to what Pemuda Rasmi, and that's the new city for Malaysia. And sometimes you outsource to one MTV, you don't even see the city. So our problem is that very often we outsource thinking to Western interest party. And Western interest party help you to design tender, help you to design the whole project, tells you what to do, and you do it as a minister. Oh, saya umumkan. And I'll give you 3 examples. 1, PPSMI. 2nd, public transport, MRT. 3rd, garbage collection. PPSMI. As I described the 2001 scenario, by the end of 2001, Mahathir felt that he was stronger, and he was worried about his legacy now. In the 70s, Dr. Mahathir, as an education minister, closed down English schools. So he wanted to revive English as the medium of teaching in mission school. But that was objected by UMNO, and it was in a way seen as unfair as well. And I tend to agree that some school as English school, and then it's difficult to handle. So Mahathir came up with a second option, DPSMI. So when he was asked by UMNO delegates at the 2002 UMNO Assembly, the 2002 UMNO Assembly ended with Mahathir crying and Rafida rushing to the stage and lost her shoe. I don't know whether you all remember, you all probably too young then. So when Dr. Mahathir was asked, in the kampung, the teachers themselves, the mathematics and science teachers themselves, do not speak English and do not understand English. How do they teach? So Mahathir replied in his closing speech at the UMNO Assembly, we will buy computer software, we'll buy computers, we'll buy LCD projectors, we'll buy screen, and the teachers can learn together with the students. And the next thing that happened in September 2002, in the budget for 2003, 5 billion ringgit were allocated to buy computers. So the computers, people actually need money. But English, level of English proficiency, 13 years later, 2015, did not actually improve. And of course, the computer lobby make money out of it, and off they go. The second question, of course, I don't say that Mahathir had good idea, but when it comes to execution, it was a computer lobby that made money. Public transport. Does KL need MRT? MRT cost, initial cost is 40 billion. With Malaysian style, with VO means variation order. With VO, we can go up to 60 billion. Do we really need MRT? Or there are other alternatives? Why was MRT proposed? Now, my very cynical explanation, you don't have to agree with me, is that someone learned how to build tunnel in an earlier project and decided to propose other sort of tunnel project. And what are the other sorts of tunnel project? One tunnel is called Pahang Selangor Water Transfer. Pahang Selangor Water Transfer is a tunneling project. The other project was called MRT. MRT is not public transport, MRT is tunnel. Someone knows how to build tunnel, had the machine and said, I want to build tunnel. And essentially, it's a tunneling project. If I were given the chance, I was just sharing with Dr. Saifuddin yesterday. If I were given the chance, I just need 5 or 6 billion ringgit to solve public transport problem in KL. I'll focus on buses mainly, and I'll pay people to take bus. Not only I'll pay you to take bus. And buses are very cheap. A good Scania bus from Europe probably costs about 600,000 ringgit, corruption included. I'm sorry, commission included. And operating costs, annual operating costs, salary, wages, wear and tear, not more than 200,000 a year. So if you have 2 million ringgit for one bus, that bus, you can buy a European bus, you can run the bus for 7 years, and that's a full cost. 2 million ringgit, buy a bus, run the bus for 7 years. For free. That means you don't have to charge. That includes the entire cost. 20 million, you can buy 10 units. 200 million, you can buy 100 units. 2 billion, you can buy 1,000 units. 4 billion, you can buy 2,000 units. The entire Kuala Lumpur only have less than 800 buses. Kuala Lumpur has only 800 buses. If I put in another 2,000 or 3,000 buses, I create a bus lane, I create a BRT, I create a faster bus lane to ensure that everyone comes on time. What would happen? I think we can actually do what MRT couldn't do for 7 years. And we can even pay people to take bus. My final point is about garbage collection. I had a discussion with Dato' Zakaria this morning in the earlier debate. I think for Malaysia to become a high-income nation, how to become a high-income nation? Oh, they say we have to attract people from Australia to go back. My answer is very simple. One day when you can pay the garbage collector 2,000 ringgit a month, then you will not be paying your fresh grad lawyer 2,000 a month. Now this is a bit complicated, but because the moment you pay your garbage collector 2,000 ringgit a month, your fresh grad lawyer who is getting paid 2,000 ringgit will become a garbage collector. So you have to increase to say about 3,000 or 4,000 ringgit or 5,000 ringgit in order to ask me to be a fresh grad lawyer. But how to make garbage collection 2,000 ringgit a month? Crazy. You should talk crazy. Gila. Because we are only paying garbage collector 600 ringgit a month, 700 ringgit a month, now maybe 900. Usually garbage collection in Malaysia, you have one Malaysian driving the truck, 5 Bangladeshi at the back. Now let's say, I don't know whether you watch how garbage is collected in Australia. One person driving the trucks and no one else. Am I right? So can we save all the Bangladeshi and only hire that Malaysian, buy a good machine, automate it, pay him 2,000 ringgit a month? Possible? Possible. But why is it not done? Because for every foreign worker that is brought into Malaysia, someone make a cut somewhere. It's the cronies. And we have to deal with it. Otherwise, the lawyers will be paid 2,000 ringgit a month, fresh grad lawyers, and you look at 2,000 ringgit a month. Here, as a fresh grad lawyer, I get 3,000 Aussie. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are short of time, so that will be the end of the session. So, yeah, unfortunately, our time is up. Yeah, but before that, I would like to just quickly summarize what we have come across today. So, first of all, Dato' Seri Abdullah has focused on the balance of law and order, and also about inclusive development. He also emphasized on the decentralization of power, and also focused on the stakeholders in policy making. Next, YB Liu, he has stated very strongly that race is a politically constructed phenomenon, and today in a globalized world, race should be a thing of the past. We should shift the mentality of stereotypes. And of course, Hamidi, he is a concerned citizen, not an aspiring politician. He has strongly encouraged all of us here to take part in grassroots participation in policy making. And my final words to all of us is that, as quoted by Dato' Seri Abdullah, politics is like a war, but it will be a long, burning struggle for all Malaysians. Thank you.